There's actually a lot about Duke I wish I could cover, and if you want to find out more, there's obviously more videos about him. But I'm gonna jump forward a little bit to a guy named Tom Blake, a guy from Wisconsin. He organized the first ever Pacific Coast Surf Riding Championship in Corona del Mar, California, in 1928. The following year, Tom Blake creates the first hollow surfboard. He and Duke became very good friends, and with Duke's help, he kept retooling the board and made the board lighter and faster. Um, so, like any other sport, like the tools in that sport obviously change how the sport is played, and we'll discuss how certain technologies and advances changed how like skateboarding um, was you can actually perform tricks on a skateboard that you couldn't do prior to certain things that happened with wheels and boards and all that. Same thing with surfing. Once the board was lighter and faster, suddenly you had more control and you could do more things with it, and it changed how people could ride, and also the riders who could then jump on it and actually feel like they actually had a chance at doing something with this in the sport. So in 1930, they began to mass produce these surfboards. That same year, Tom Blake builds the first waterproof surf camera housing. So uh, it's hard to imagine how big of a deal this was, because now we have GoPros and all this other stuff that we can put onto things like boards and actually witness what it's like to physically be, in the from the POV of the rider, from the feet of a rider on a board, and see what kind of that perspective will give you about the sport. But so now this is the first time this has happened, right? 1930, around this time, he builds the first waterproof surf camera housing. The waterproof surf camera housing that could be able to sit on a board and, or at least get into the water and give you a perspective of what it's like to be a surfer from the surfer's perspective, not just from the beach perspective where you would stand and watch the surfers. So now people are like, oh, well, now I get a taste of this. This looks really fun. This is revolutionary. To see a world of a surfer from the perspective of a surfer suddenly opened up a whole new world of people getting excited about surfing. In 1935, he added one more element to the surfboard, the fin. So now the fin added stability and control. So now you got a lighter board, and then you have a fin which added more control. And suddenly the sport was about to explode, right? Now you can do whatever you wanted on a surfboard. And just as this was about to really catch on, something happened. The Great Depression hit America. So by the mid 1940s, the Depression was 30s, early 40s, the Depression was happening, and surfing once again, no pun intended, went underwater. It was out. It was gone. Just as it was trying to get itself out there. And if you did surf around this time, it meant that you probably had a friend who had a board, you had money, and again, it was kind of a rebellious moment in surfing, because you had to really go out. You really wanted to be able to surf, despite having nothing else and money and whatever else. You had to surf, and you went out there and you found a way to go out. So it was a very a real kind of a powerful moment if you were a surfer, how serious you were about surfing if you were going to go out there and do it, despite the economy in the world that was happening in America. So by the mid 1940s, the Depression is over, and something new had begun in the world of surfboarding: fiberglass. So now you've got the fin, obviously you've got the lighter board, and now fiberglass. So suddenly now surfing was back, the economy was back, and a whole new revolution in surfing happened. Here's a little taste of what that's about.